this learning event to happen. So thank you, Old National Bank. And that has been recorded. So it is documented. All right. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Deborah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for hosting this event and for your support. And before I get started, well, my name is Deborah Hurston. I'm the Executive Director of the Association for Black Economic Power, for those of you that I have not met. But I do want to have the team that's with me and has been with me through this entire journey introduce themselves. And we'll start with Denise Hugini. Denise?
My name is Denise Hugini. I'm with the African American Credit Union Coalition, and we're so pleased to be involved in supporting this initiative and to see the importance that it has to the local community and even on a national scale.
Ben Herring.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see many of you again, and thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Ben Herring. I'm the Director of Engagement with the Minnesota Credit Union Network, working closely alongside ABEP to create the credit union here. So thanks for having me.
And to be quite honest, ABAP could not be as far as they have gone or accomplished what they've had without those two individuals and organizations that they represent. During our last visit here, for those of you who weren't here, I introduced you to the new ABAP leadership of the board, as well as myself, the staff. We talked about the critical milestones for the organization with the credit union board and the selection of the CEO happening in the second quarter of this year, and submitting the state application as well as the national application also in the second quarter of this year. And we're anticipating a soft launch the fourth quarter of this year, with the grand opening happening in 23. And before I move on to the other areas, these milestones we need to understand are soft milestones, if you will, because once we submit the application, it goes to the regulators and it's literally out of our hands. So their examination process may be spot on with our guesstimates, and it may not. It could happen quicker, which would be great, but it could happen longer as well. It could take a longer time as well. So our funding and membership requirements, we're looking for working capital of 4.5, the headquarters build out of 1.5, for a total funding requirement of 6 million. Member deposits, institutional pledges, we have a goal of 3 million, and consumer pledges at 2 million, with the total requirements for pledges at 5 million. And please do not hesitate to stop me in the middle of this if you have any questions. So what's new since the last time I met with you is this initiative has gotten a tremendous amount of national support, national exposure. Through the initiative, and Ben is going to talk about it in more detail, there's a national capital campaign taking place now where we're asking the credit union community to support our operating capital by pledging their support through a portal that the Minnesota Credit Union Network has. We also had exposure at the absolute largest credit union event in the nation that took place in DC. And we participated in the broadcast that goes, that all credit unions in the country have access to. And that's what you see there. And one of the rare things, actually, this virtually never happens. So ABAP and the Village is known nationally now. People have embraced this initiative. They understand and feel the journey of North Minneapolis residents. So while we were in DC, and my visit to DC was a gift from one of our credit union members, because they realized the importance of ABAB in the village having a voice at this national platform. So during that visit, we had the opportunity to talk with Representative Omar as well as Senator Klobuchar and Tina Smith. Representative Omar was aware of the original attempt. She was not familiar or she did not realize that this activity was still going on, this effort was still alive. The two gentlemen that you see there, this is what I mean by extremely rare. They lead the regulatory arm that determines whether or not a village will move forward. The gentleman at the top, Kyle Hoffman, he requested 3 meetings with ABAB and with the Minnesota Credit Union Network to understand our journey, to assure that we had the resources that we needed to continue to move this forward, and solicited our support to make this journey easier for people coming behind us. It is virtually impossible for me to come up with words to explain how hard of a lift this is. And with a state application, when you're a federal organization, there are a lot of gyrations that hinder the process. They need to understand those twists and turns from our perspective. The gentleman below is Honorable Rodney Hood. He is the former chair of the National Credit Union Association, and he requested a meeting with us, which again, this absolutely never happens. And again, the only reason it happened is because the story of North Minneapolis, George Floyd, Orlando Castillo, the banking desert that exists is known beyond Minnesota. And the credit union industry profession has a commitment to diversity and inclusion. When they heard about the story and the fact that prior to ABAB, prior to the community creating ABAB, that no credit union had come to the rescue, they felt that should never have happened. And so now what they want is to make sure that since this is happening, since people are leaning in, they want to make sure on their end that we have all the resources that we need to push this through. In fact, just 2 days ago, I got an email from the regulator staff that you see there asking me to give them some dates as to when we would be actually submitting the application to them so that they could lay out and have all the resources that they need in place ready for our process with their organization. So back here at home, the Credit Union Application Committee is made up of all of these entities. You know what, I'm gonna step back and give Ben, because this group of people, I would call them the experts. And we, ABAB and the village, would not have access to these people if it weren't for the Credit Union Network. And so I'm jumping off script here, but I am gonna ask Ben to talk about this.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. I'm pretty used to you jumping off the script by now, so I was anticipating you to team me up for this one. So thanks again. So just to level set with everyone on the line here, the Minnesota Credit Union Network, the organization that I work for, is the state trade association for all 94 credit unions now in the state of Minnesota. And so really what we do is certainly we're the advocacy arm, and we make those connections with state and federal legislators, when it comes to this project, critical, right? When it comes to our network of experts, when I was actually looking at when Deborah and I were connected, and it was actually just about a year ago. And pretty quickly we realized likely the best way that the network can help or could help was to pull together our resources. And so we represent, I think, 110 or so credit unions who are outside of the state as well, may join our league for many reasons, but to really join our our industry and our community. And so we've been very considerate with who we've added to the charter application committee, because there are many experts at our disposal. So this list that you see in front of you is comprised of folks that we've pulled along who have voiced interest or have wanted to support in some way, shape, or form, and have, we all have a vested interest in the success of this credit union. So who you see on the screen here are very intentionally pulled together leaders in our space. And you can see that it's comprised of national, regional, and local individuals. So really, really fortunate to have been able to pull together this group. And I call it the dream team. If this team can't create a credit union, I don't know what team would be able to. So thanks, Deborah.
Thank you. And here, even with that dream team, and they are experts, this project demands that the community's voice be heard. So ABAP created the Community Steering Committee. Everything that those group of experts produce gets reviewed from a standpoint of how does that impact the community. That's what this group does. And if we could go to the next slide. Okay, so they, some of their top priorities are, of course, looking at or onboarding the credit union board, as well as the CEO. They have been fortunate to get the support, the pro bono support of an executive search firm to assist them. That executive search firm is Verseek, and they have a division that specializes in banking and finance. And they are looking for, or assisting us with not only the CEO, but also the credit union board. We also have a core processor. The credit union steering committee is looking at the core processor and how any policies and procedures in that core processor impacts the community. And of course, the credit union steering committee is looking at the marketing plan and the business plan, all from the angle of how does this impact the community or address the community's concerns. And then of course, also there's the overall charter application. Since we last met, some of our outreach has been to speak directly with the community. When I came on board, I was so intent on keeping my head down, getting all the pieces into place to get this, this initiative moving forward, that I didn't raise my head up enough to talk to the community. We did town hall meetings when I first came on board, and then there was a void from the community's perspective in communicating with them. So we scheduled 3 town hall meetings, two of which have already happened. Then there's a third taking place on the 31st of this month. The 2 that have already taken place were much larger than what we anticipated. They were absolutely great. One was hosted by, the first one was hosted by Mental Relief Services. That's led by Tommy Beavis, who's a business leader in the community. And the other was headed by the NAACP. Their president, Cynthia Wilson, assisted us or hosted us with that. And the third that will take place on March 31st will be headed by a very popular radio station in the community, KMOJ Radio. So our funding update. In a moment, I'm gonna toss the baton to Denise, but some of our funding objectives require that the application must demonstrate the support and commitment of the community. And that was part of the reason why moving back and doing those town hall meetings was important, because the community didn't know where we were, and some members of the community didn't know if we were. And so that constant communication with the community is absolutely critical. And I think we've made some major inroads in that area. This project must ensure financial viability and stability during the initial operating period. And we must be able to fund the initial startup and costs for the headquarters build out. And with that, I'm going to pass the baton to Denise.
Thank you, Deborah. Just by way of review, and we've probably reviewed some of these with you in the past, we've really identified 3 paths to the $6 million goal. One is the Minnesota Credit Union Network campaign that Ben is going to talk about. The second is working with the private community, private funders, and corporations. And then the last category, the $3 million, has to do with the city of Minneapolis, and I believe it's going to be the ARPA funds, the American Rescue and Protection Act. When we initially approached the city, they were looking at CARES Act funding. Now, under President Biden, the cities and counties have received hundreds of millions of dollars. They've all made their plans back to the Treasury, and now they're beginning to make community investment in things like infrastructure, broadband, public health. And I do believe that the feedback has been warm about an investment in the credit union. So I'll turn it back over to you, Deborah.
Yep, sure. So the Minnesota Credit Union Network, and Ben, please feel free to chime in here. The goal for the Minnesota Credit Union Network, they established, as I mentioned earlier, a capital operating fund through their foundation. That fund's goal was $1 million. And I believe we're just over $2.4 million right now. Ben, would you like to share with them about the deposits?
Yes. So just to, again, to kind of set the stage a little bit. So when Deborah and I were connected last March, we went to work pulling together our credit union advisory team. And certainly we've been involved in assisting with the charter application. But the network also has a foundation. And so, as not-for-profit, financial cooperatives, credit unions really abide by what we've deemed as 8 cooperative principles, and one of which is cooperatives supporting other cooperatives. So what we saw here back in November, and why we launched this was, what better way to exemplify this tenet than by supporting the creation of another new credit union that's being built to serve a very specific community for a very just cause. So, with that, we wanted to give the opportunity to our Minnesota credit unions to support. We're currently at about 500,000 in contributed pledges for capital. Once the credit union receives its charter application, that will trigger the release of those funds. And then, Deborah, to your question, and this actually, to put it relative to our goal and our benchmarks, $2.4 million in institutional deposit pledges have already come in through our credit unions. That goal is 3 million. So we're getting pretty close to that institutional deposit pledge benchmark. So, with that, I'm happy to answer obviously any questions on the foundation or the capital campaign that we're running, but that's where we're at today.
Thank you. So our where we are now, we have outstanding proposals at almost 600,000 or 29%. We have targeted proposals at about 300,000 or 15%. And we're still looking to be determined for that 56% or 1.1 million for our total requirements, to meet our total requirements of 2 million. And as Denise mentioned earlier, we still do have, and we believe it's still alive and under consideration, the $3 million request with the city. So our critical success factors, just to review, are funding requirements, our member deposits. The CEO with credit union experience would be ideal. The credit union board and our critical documents, the marketing plan, the outreach plan, the business plan. And of course, we didn't talk about it much here today, but our digital footprint, which would be the core processor, the main piece of equipment that runs the credit union. And we have narrowed that down to 2 potential vendors, and shortly we'll be narrowing that down to 1. Any questions?
Could I ask, this is Peter McLaughlin from LISC. Do you know what the schedule is for the city consideration of your request?
No, thank you, Peter. That is has to be the #1 question I circle back with the city on regularly. I think their schedule is fluid because at one point it's well, let me make sure. No, because it's kind of fluid for them. So I'm just gonna leave it there. Hopefully it will be soon.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Hey, Deborah, it's Corey Knudsen from Old National Bank. Great presentation. And I just wanted to circle back to your board member needs and any other volunteer needs that you have. I know that that search firm is going to help you, but you've got some people here maybe that could network on your behalf. So could you maybe explain a little bit more how volunteers or board members could help you, or what you're looking for the skill set?
Absolutely. For the CEO, we ideally would love someone with banking experience who understands the cooperative, and who understands the cooperative environment and can transition from banking to cooperative. That would be ideal. For the credit union board, people with financial experience would be ideal. People with regulatory experience would be ideal, and compliance. Ben, is there anything you can think of there that I missed?
I think those are the critical components of the credit union board. And also just to reiterate, community members, representation from the community, I think is key too.
And just as for sheer numbers, we need a minimum of 5 board members. And then we have 2 committees that need to be filled. I believe it's 3 each. 3 for the supervisory committee and 3 for the credit committee.
We had a question in the chat about the geography. I think I responded accurately, but what is the geography that would be served by the credit union?
Perfect. The credit union charter field of membership would be Hennepin and Ramsey County.
Deborah or anyone else on the ABEP team, I wonder if we could just kind of go back to the basic kind of premise of this whole effort. A lot of the funders on this call have probably at one time funded income support or other financial services, whether it's in North Minneapolis or elsewhere, whether that's job training or financial literacy or home ownership supports. I mean, there's a million programs out there that have been working on this stuff for a long time. But what does the credit union bring to a community like North Minneapolis that's beyond what those nonprofit service providers, which we've been funding forever, are doing.
The credit union, in my opinion, and Ben and Denise, please feel free to chime in if you like. The credit union brings a full financial institution that is owned by its members, that when they walk in the door, they feel like they're home. The credit union brings an opportunity for its members, particularly the Northside members, to have options other than payday lenders. The credit union, this, you can't put a dollar on it. The credit union is a huge source of pride. There's no amount of money that can address that. The credit union will be one place where when they walk in, they have a relationship, and that relationship is designed to help them grow in every financial aspect of their life. The credit union may not be able to meet all their needs, but the credit union will have resources, relationships, collaborations that can help guide those people from step A, B, C, and D of their financial journey. There's no entity right now that exists in North Minneapolis that can do all that and provide that person with a place where when they walk in that door, they feel like they belong.
Awesome. Thank you, Deborah. We have a hand up from Patty.
Hi, Patty.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So Deborah, just a question as it relates to that, because I agree with what you're saying, but obviously there are a lot of unbanked households in North Minneapolis. And will there be some kind of plan to try to reach out to unbanked households, or, those households that aren't using a financial services provider to help them? Just wondering about kind of what the outreach looks like, because we know that there's been kind of a lack of trust along the way with financial services providers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Unbanked happens for a number of different reasons. There will be strategies developed to bring people along. While the bank will exist, the credit union will exist in a place. The outreach will take place in the community. There's no way to reach unbanked people unless you're willing to go where they are. And so, and you have to be able to speak their language. You have to be able to identify with their concerns. If you can't do that, that relationship is never going to happen. And so the credit union, while it will have a place, it will also have tentacles into the community to relate to people where they are.
Perfect. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
So there's a question around, so your fundraising sort of timeline is very, goal and timeline is pretty aggressive. You're trying to raise this money in a short period of time, and just wondering sort of what's driving that? Why is there this urgency to raise the resource in a short period of time? What's contingent upon that?
I'd say you cannot submit the charter without the performer has to demonstrate a pattern of stability and growth. The fundraising helps us make sure that that roadmap is clear and steady. So the fundraising is critical to the performer. And we can't submit the application without the former. So one thing leads to the other and leads to the other. And we do realize that it's aggressive. We do realize that while it's aggressive, that we may need to be fluid. We may need to adjust things. but you got to have a target. You've got to have a mark.
And just a quick follow-up, and then I'll give the floor to Corey. I recall in the last session, you talked about once the actual charter has been submitted, it can take up to 18 months for that to be processed all the way, or can you just say a little bit more about that piece?
Absolutely. It can take a lot longer than that. But so remember, there are two applications. There's the state and there's the national. In the state, we have regular meetings with the regulators here as well as with the national. At the state level, the entity that actually approves the charter, so if we're applying for a state charter, we've been told, look in the vicinity of 90 days for a response. The two applications will be submitted at the exact same time. At the national level, since they are aware of this whole initiative, they're saying, look in the vicinity of 6 months. This never happens. Now, whether or not they're able to hold to that, I have no idea. But what we're doing to help them stick to that 6 months or within there is eliminate that back and forth dance that happens after you submit your application. So we submit the application, they have a question, they send it back. We address that question, send it back. They look some more, they have another question, they send it back. That process right there, I call it the dance. That is what leads to 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. What we've done is establish these relationships with the regulators so that we meet with them on a regular basis. We get our questions answered. Any questions they have, we address them so that when we submit the application, we've eliminated many, if not all, of those dance steps. And that right there, that process, that never happens.
Awesome. Thank you for clarifying that, Deborah. Corey, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I work for Old National Bank, and you know, like a lot of other organizations here, we truly believe in being better together and really want to lift up Village and everything that's going on, and make sure that North Minneapolis gets what it needs. You know, I've had the pleasure of meeting with Denise and Deborah on more than one occasion. I think they're very impressive women. Ben, I haven't been able to meet you yet, but everything that you're doing is so needed. And, you know, how long ago was it? 5+ years ago that this financial institution and MDI was identified as the #1 need by the community of North Minneapolis. You know, it's a homegrown effort. We really think it's, you know, the foundational effort that's going to help with a lot of economic development in the community. And I know a lot of funders on this call have funded it. Old National has provided a sponsorship for the town halls and some other things because we see it as an investment in helping them raise the funds they need. And I know a lot of our guidelines as funders prevent from investing at a point when, you know, when something is new. That they need to have a 3-year track record or whatever it is. But if there's anything that you could do to help them get to that point, if it's a sponsorship or technical assistance or volunteerism, I would just invite you to look at that, to look at your own networks as to what other organizations or funders that you know that might be interested in this, to just help this get off the ground. It's so needed. There's not time to lose here. You know, North Minneapolis needs rebuilding now. The disparities have been there for long enough. Like, they're doing such a great job and they'll make this work. And that timeline is aggressive, but it's also needed. So I just wanted to put that plug in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. We have another question in the chat. I'm just going to read it off for you. So Deborah, has there been a scan of the nonprofits in North Minneapolis and the potential for employer sponsorship for their employees in Village Financial?
No, but I think I'm going to steal that idea. At least I have not done the scan, but I love that idea. I absolutely love it.
I'm happy to jump in there just on a little bit of what we've been working on. So as Deborah mentioned, we're we're working on the business plan right now, which is really pulling together all of the numbers. It's pulling in the marketing and outreach plan into this whole package around, what is it going to take to run and operate a credit union in the Northside. And so as a part of that, we've been doing competitive analyses. We've been certainly looking at, how is the field of membership, the community that we're going to serve with this credit union going to be impacted. And a part of that has been looking at the charter, the intended field of membership. And so when it comes to how credit unions have been able to serve groups of individuals in the past, I think, Joanne, to your question, many credit unions are able to formulate partnerships with employers and have a very specific employer credit union relationship. Because we're moving forward with a state community charter, part of that designation or a part of that field of membership is lives, works, worships, goes to school in, is related to an individual in this community. And so that's part of the reason why I believe that ABEP is seeking a state charter, is because we can apply for that community. And so the partnership there is not going to be as formal, I guess, as a federally chartered credit union that would have to add an employer onto their charter in order to serve those employees. Because we're doing a community and because a nonprofit in this community who employs individuals exists there, they'll actually be already eligible for membership. And so the partnership is really going to be around being intentional with creating that connection. And I think it goes back to community outreach, right? Getting people involved in the movement and in the community, in the credit union itself. So.
And I'd like to speak to the nonprofit aspect. There has been a lot of research done by ABEP. There's a very thorough outreach plan for both St. Paul and Minnesota, both Hennepin and Ramsey counties, but it's regarding more the outreach to nonprofits to serve their clients. I don't think it was really around serving the employees, but they could, but to serve low-income people, to work with poverty-fighting agencies and schools to do financial empowerment. So to get the unbanked and underbanked into the system, usually you're working hand in hand with nonprofit organizations. And there's quite a few very successful models of that with not just municipal financial empowerment centers, but credit union financial empowerment centers that have been implemented all over the country. And so that's kind of the model that the community engagement officer has put together for doing the outreach, working with nonprofits and the K through 12 schools.
Can I just ask, is there a sort of a target for the average deposit, for example, from members in terms of the basic members using the credit union as their financial institution?
So let me just speak to that because I think you kind of have three types of deposits. You're going to have sponsoring members who are financial institutions making large deposits, 100,000 or more. We're going to have some mid-sized depositors who tend to be higher income, middle-class people, professionals who might just purchase CDs, but they're not moving their banking relationships. They make a CD, maybe anywhere from 5,000 to 25,000. These are the kinds of pledges even we're getting on the website, higher income people. And then I would say working families, they're probably going to keep an average balance of $500 to $1,000 because they get paid every week and they spend down to zero every week. So those $1,000 balances, that's our bread and butter of the consumer deposits. And then we'll have other people who are really providing deposits as more of a mission, backing our mission.
Thank you. That's helpful.
So I attended one of the town hall meetings, and one of the questions that came up in that space that maybe this group would benefit from too is, if and when you'd be able to also open sort of business accounts. So like for me, could I open my business account with Village from the beginning, or would I have to wait for that?
Denise, you want to take that?
Yeah, you can use a DBA, a different tax ID, to open an account. I think a business account or organization account. I think the difference is initially the focus of Village is to serve consumers. We may not have all the bells and whistles of merchant services, say maybe that a small retailer might need. But through the Minnesota Credit Union Network, I'm sure we'll have a number of referral partnerships available.
You know, and I think I'd like to add, initially, the regulators want to see you come out the box, if you will, very conservatively. And so consumer loans will be the priority, not business loans. And until you get some runway and a steady growth. So there is a products and services timeline, and the business loans in particular would be the second part of that.
Good morning, it's Christine Hobro. I'm with Old National Bank. I'm the community banking president, and I am so excited over this project. So I hope it's okay. I missed the earlier meeting, so this is really new, but this is exciting. I've been in banking a long time, mostly in Minnesota, but also Southern Minnesota, Rochester, and Denver. And I did a lot of work, I hate to even tell you, about 10 years ago with Wesley Walker over on the north side in Minneapolis. And in my previous role, I managed a big section of the Twin Cities. We'll leave it at that with someone else. But what I'm excited about this is a couple of things. So first of all, I love that it's a credit union, because I think it gives people choices, and a choice that maybe they don't have today. I do think it might take a little bit of education to make sure folks understand that this is a different kind of bank, if you will. And I don't know the laws, so I don't know if the word bank can even be used, but something like that. So they understand this is for financial services, it's to help me, and it's okay, right? Because I just think that concept might be new to the underbanked especially, but especially a lot of folks over on the north side. But my only one thing for you to think about, if you haven't, is there is a Village Bank in Anoka and Ramsey. So you'll want to think through that to make sure anybody who's relocated doesn't get confused. But I love the cooperative part about a credit union and working with clients. And I think the fact that it is a credit union will be able to do things that banks can't do because the heavy regulatory burden that we have at a bank, right? So congratulations to whoever came up with the idea in general to go down the credit union path, because I think it's very smart. I think it's very flexible. And I really do think that Village is going to be able to meet the needs of the community at a level that a lot of the banks can't. And so I'm just thrilled with everything I heard today. Congratulations to everyone. It just makes me so happy to hear this. So I'm really thrilled to be invited, and I just wanted to share with you. It's exciting. So congratulations to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your support. And we did get, ABAP did get support from Old National to produce 2 videos geared toward the general public to help increase our pledges. So we have set a $2 million community pledge goal, and those videos will be circulating soon to help them, to help promote the need for the community's involvement. And so thank you for that.
Great. Thank you.
Well, I think we probably have time for maybe one more question if there's anything burning that has not come up. Otherwise, then I'll turn it over to Joel to close us out.
Before you do, I have an ask, in addition to the other things, but aside from financial support, what the regulators also would like to see is letters of support. And so if each organization on here could write a letter to whom it may concern, indicating that you support support this credit union coming into the community and send it to me, that is huge. If while you're writing that letter of support, you would like to indicate that you intend to make a deposit, that would be great, but no pressure. But I really would like the letter of support, if possible.
Awesome. Thank you, Deborah.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions. So I'll take us home. So, and just to model that behavior, Northside Funders Group has sent a letter of support to the mayor in support of the funding request that Deborah mentioned earlier. And we have also made a grant from our pool, our grant making pool, to support increased fundraising and marketing efforts as Deborah and her team try to get this over the finish line. But I also, so as we close out, I just want to recenter us on the why for this work. You know, if you've been around this work before, if you've heard the story, you know this was an idea that emerged from the tragedy of Philando Castile's murder and was an attempt to build a Black-led regenerative financial institution on the North Side. And it has taken a long time. It is still taking a long time for lots of reasons, and mainly because of the enormity of the task. I think nobody who was there at the beginning understood all of the steps and hoops and, as Deborah said, gyrations that happen on this long journey to getting credit union chartered and then open. But you know, the flame, the kernel of that dream still is true, that you know, a credit union on the North Side, a Black-led credit union on the North Side, represents hope and opportunity and the belief that assets will be built, and that North Side families, even, you know, working class families with $500 in their checking account, are building for a better future. So I just want to encourage folks to, as you think about you know, your grant portfolio, if you're a funder, and what kinds of work you've been supporting in North Minneapolis, to imagine how a Village Financial really would amplify what you're already funding by giving the clients and the staff of the organizations that you're supporting a chance to build their wealth locally in a neighborhood that's really been decimated over the years by predatory and extractive banking practice. So that's my spiel to close us out. And I just want to thank everybody who participated today and our presenters. And if you want to learn more about things like Village and all the fascinating and complex and ever-changing things that are happening in North Minneapolis, we would love to have you at our next Northside Funders Group meeting, which happens always the second Friday of the month. Next one will be Friday, April 8th. You don't have to make any contribution to show up for a meeting. We'll gladly welcome you to the table. But with that, I'll call it a close and give everybody back about 5 minutes. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
You too.